again, Don Snyder. I think some of you were here last time I presented, but if you're new, I'm the product manager here at Frontier. If you're building a new feature, you always want to kind of explore the problem first, right? It's called the problem space if you haven't read that book yet. It's great. So what's the problem here? Well, if you're like most companies, payments that should have landed in your bank account haven't yet. That means you're spending staff hours on money to fix that, or you're not addressing the issue fully and your bottom line is hurting because of it. So this is just a quick note on DSO, or days sales outstanding. It's a useful metric to determine how much late payments are affecting your company. So what is DSO? It, again, days sales outstanding is a measure of the average number of days that it takes a company to collect a payment after a sale has been made. DSO is often determined on a monthly or quarterly or annual basis. And it can be calculated by dividing the amount of accounts receivable during a given period by the total value of credit sales during that same period, and then multiplying that by the number of days in that period measure. You guys all captured that and completely memorized it already, I'm sure. In essence, it means how long your company typically takes to collect a payment. And why does that matter? Well, the quicker your company turns a sales into actual cash, the quicker you can put that cash to use. So I know I made a joke about the formula before, but it really is useful. So if you're regularly working with your sales numbers, here is the formula for DSO. If you aren't already looking at this metric, I encourage you to start, as it can really reveal some important things about accounts receivable. So jot it down if you're interested. It is here for you. I'll give you another few seconds if you're interested. No pen's moving. All right. So who is affected by late payments? Well, the problem of late payments is pretty widespread. When recently surveyed, it was found that 93% of businesses reported late payments from customers. And if you see 93% and you're like me, you're thinking, okay, virtually no business is immune from this problem, right? The average payment term is about 27 days, but the realized payment reception is actually closer to 61 days, which is crazy, I think, because before reading that stat, my assumption would have been that the worst case scenario was like double, right? So it'd be like 54 days, but no, the realized is actually more than double. It's at 61. Almost 30% of customers use delayed payments as a form of financing. So what does that tell you, right? It's not just an accident that they didn't make a payment. A lot of them are doing this intentionally. This is part of their budgeting, which means you really have to stay on top of this. It's not just happening. It's being chosen. And this issue is actually getting worse for B2C and B2B companies because all these stats that you're seeing, this is on the rise. Late payments are on the rise. Late payments touch everything. So in that same survey, 40% of businesses had to delay payments to their own suppliers due to this problem. And I'm sure that stands out to you the way that it stands out to me, because that means right now your payments are outstanding. Your customers aren't paying you on time, and you're not addressing it quickly enough. And that means that right now your cash flow is impacted, right? Money that you're supposed to have access to isn't in your bank account. And that all means that soon your supply chain is going to be impacted. You can't buy supplies, you can't pay staff, you can't fund expansions or improvements. So it permeates, right? It's as that agent in the Matrix say, it's a virus. Kind of speaking to what I just said, accounts receivable plus time equals exponential cost. So you can't just look at the balance sheet for these late payments and interpret that total directly, because the financial impact is always heavier than just that total. As we saw on the last slide, cash flow and your supply chain are quickly impacted by those outstanding payments. But we can look at this in greater detail. So first we have administrative costs. The true cost of managing a receivable comes to around $8.44 per invoice, according to a report published by the Fidesic Corporation. Around 90% of that cost is labor. So we're looking at closer to $10 in total cost. If $8.44 is the average, and 90% of that is, it's not pretty. And the higher that your DSO is, the worse the higher the admin cost increases, basically. And then we have opportunity costs. So when you're waiting for those late payments to be made, you're also holding off, as I mentioned before, on investments that could be generating more revenue for your company and frankly keeping you competitive. It's not just about revenue, but it's about you expanding and evolving your own ideas, right? And that takes money, typically. If it doesn't take money for you, please let me know what your business model is. That sounds really interesting. Finally, there is bad debt. The longer you carry accounts receivable, or late payments in general, the greater the risk of bad debt. And this gets very unsustainable very quickly if it isn't addressed. For example, a company with a profit margin of about 10% that incurs a loss of $10,000 due to bad debt typically must generate about $100,000 in additional revenue in order to recover that loss of capital. So this is sort of an equation that shows what you have to do. This affects so much that this is how much money you'd have to make to kind of counter that on top of it. So there's a compound effect here, right? You're in debt because you haven't collected payments, and you're not investing more with that money, and you can't afford payroll, and you're talking, to a loan, or you're taking a loan with a high interest rate to cover that. It gets pretty ugly pretty quickly. And again, if you're into formulas, if you're working with your sales numbers, here's actually a formula that you can use to turn opportunity costs into a hard number. This is another important metric. So if you are, if there's a question mark over your head over whether bad debt and late payments in general are affecting you, there's a couple of formulas there that you can actually generate a hard number for. If you need to scare a stakeholder, for instance, those formulas are useful. So are you scared yet, right? Late payments shouldn't really concern you, because I don't think concern is the right word. They should scare you because of that ripple effect. And the vital parts of your company are affected by late payments. There's just no getting around that. If you aren't scared, you've either solved it already, or you aren't aware of the impact, or you're taking a nap right now during this presentation, which I totally get. I don't blame you. Conferences are a lot to take in. I got one fan back there. Where are you? Oh, he works with me. He doesn't count. He champions our cause. All right, so how can Chargent help? Well, that's where automation comes into play. We think automation is deeply needed when it comes to an issue like this, and we're excited to build this into our product, into the automated collections feature. This is the process of automatically communicating with customers and reattempting card and bank account charges to ensure the timely collection of accounts receivable. So how does this work? This was the clearest graphic I could put together for this. Basically, when a Chargent order, when a payment fails against a Chargent order, this is typically a recurring order, right? Our automated collections feature activates for that order, and it creates an automated collections record and automated collections stages records. Then those stages are scheduled and executed, which means that emails are sent to your customers to inform them of the payment failure. And these emails can include a payment request link, which allows them to click through and make the payment themselves. We've talked about this in terms of its convenience as well as reducing PCI scope. In this case, it's a nice nudge to your customers. Hey, something didn't work, you can fix it right here. In the second stage, what also happens is that Chargent will automatically retry the payment on whatever schedule you've configured for each stage, unless you've chosen to not retry. I recommend retrying a couple times though. And then third, when a payment against that order is successful, regardless of where that payment came from. So as I said in a previous presentation, if that customer did click that link and make the payment, or if one of the automatic retries brought the payment in, or if they just called in and made the payment, if you complete that payment against that order, the automated collections process will halt itself. Then the unused stage records will automatically delete, keeping your org free of litter. And then based on what you've configured in the settings, the automated collections record and the used stage records will also automatically delete based on whatever that schedule is. So let's take a look at how this works in a live demonstration. Okay, so when you first install, when you first install automated collections as a feature, it's actually, we use feature activation, so we would activate it for you. The first thing you want to do to configure this, and by the way, the whole point of this exercise is to show you how quickly you set this up. First, you click this toggle switch, which turns it on. Once you do that, the system is going to ask you to create at least one stage. We recommend more than one stage, but this is what it looks like. This has already been configured, but I want to kind of take you through what it looks like to configure one. So you'd click the plus sign, and you choose first the email template that you want to use. I've only got one in here, but this is the email that's going to be sent when that payment fails. If you want to edit this, you can always do so, clicking this icon, and you'll have the list of the email templates that Automated Collections uses. And you can edit this just like you're probably already used to editing emails in Salesforce. We've got a merge field in here that pulls in the customer's name. We have a merge field that talks about the amount due that was failed and the decline date when it failed. And then this merge field is for that payment request link that they click on to go through and make the payment themselves. So this is pretty bare. Obviously, you would configure or customize this so that it includes your own branding. But that's what that first pick list is here for. This is where you choose which email is sent. You can also choose to send no email. The other pick list is for the automatic retry logic. So you can choose to retry 3 days after, or maybe you want to wait a business week, so 5 days after. A really cool option is to choose the day of the month. If you want to get clever and you want to try to coordinate this next automatic retry with a date that your customer is most likely to receive a paycheck, right? The 15th or the 30th, something like that. We choose day of the month, and we choose probably the 16th, right? Something like that. But that's what it looks like to configure. You literally just click a toggle button, you set up a couple of stages or a few stages, and you are up and running once you hit that save button. The way that this one is set up, we have an email that goes out, and it's all automatically going to retry 3 days later. So if they respond to this email and they click that link and the payment is made, great, this halts. If they don't respond to that email, our system is going to try 3 days later anyway. The second one, we're not going to send another email based on whatever patterns and timings works best for your industry. It might make sense to not send an email or send one. If you've got a bunch of stages, you're probably not sending emails for every single stage. But then this one's going to try again 5 days later. And then our third stage sends no email again. I would probably set this up for my final stage. I'd probably have an email that says, hey, a payment failed. We've been reaching out. It hasn't happened yet. So we're going to be, pausing the subscription or suspending the account. And then I'd probably choose this option, stop recurring, mark as unpaid. So what this is going to do is it's going to stop that Chargent recurring order from recurring, and it's going to mark it as unpaid, so that any of your reporting or anybody who's looking at these records can see what happened here. A payment failed. We attempted to collect automatically. No response or payment was made, so we have stopped this recurring payment. So again, just to reiterate, setting this up is a toggle switch and configuring a couple or a few stages that have a couple of pick lists that you choose from. It is about a 4 to 10 minute ordeal in my own testing. And what it looks like once it is set up is this. I'm going to pop into a Chargent order, and I've got a related list here for Chargent Automated Collections, and this one is in Collections. So Automated Collections is basically, other than the back-end logic, it's going to create two types of objects. One is the Chargent Automated Collections object. That is an object that basically indicates this order had a failed payment. We've activated collections. It shows the order that it's related to, the account that it's related to. Conveniently, it will show who was emailed in those automatic emails. And then it creates child records for the stages. And it creates all the stages before they've even been executed, just so that you can see what your process looks like anytime somebody's popping in here. The stages are really pretty simple. They're going to show which stage out of how many stages are being used, what that stage's unique ID is, the email template. It also shows the next payment retry and when they were emailed. But the cool thing is most of that info is visible right here in the related list. And so when we look at this, we can see that they were emailed on the 14th. Our next retry date is the 14th, so it looks like we configured that one to email and retry on the same day. And then we've got 2 more stages to go through. Now, if you look back over at the fields for the Chargent Automated Collections object as opposed to the collection stages, you see 3 that are unpopulated. These populate after the process completes. So if a customer makes a payment, again, regardless of how that payment is made, it will show you the date and time that the payment was received here automatically. It'll show you the stage that had completed, which is going to be very useful. When you implement this feature and you want to get an idea of how well this is working for you, you can run reports, and we ship a few of these reports for you, to you, that will show all the times Automated Collections has been engaged, and when it succeeded, what stages were there. So you can kind of get an idea of which of your stages are working, right? Maybe the copy of this email isn't good. Maybe we're too aggressive and customers don't like us, or not aggressive enough. But you can do some pretty precise reporting and get an idea of not only how well this is working, but where you need to make tweaks. And then delete on, that's a reference to the fact that I said that once Automated Collections completes for a record, you can set it up so that it automatically deletes the used stages, because the unused stages will automatically delete anyway. It will delete the used ones and the overall Chargent Automated Collections record. So to summarize, this feature will do work that traditionally is done by staff. The retry logic, the dates, the emails, these are all chosen by you or your admin and configured. And this takes literally minutes to configure and activate. And once you've done that, this is a set and forget collections process.
Hey, thank you for watching our video. And while you're here, please subscribe to our channel. Click that notification bell for immediate updates. And if you'd like to talk payments, please get in touch. We're always here to help.